Several interesting things today. A very good item in the Financial Times pointing out that the US is hitting itself hard. If they wanted to solve this balance of payments problem, all they have to do is look at their fiscal deficit. They're running at a huge deficit internally. Therefore, cash is flowing around, and therefore they're buying stuff from overseas. If they were to rectify their budget deficit or even move partly towards it, this would help solve their problem. Most interesting discussion.
Where would they cut, Ron?
Well, that's a good question. Maybe they don't need to cut. They've got to think about increasing taxes. I mean, that's been the folly in many cases. They keep reducing taxes, and increasing expenditure. But, if you're a billionaire in the States right now, you pay less than 1% tax. A poor working guy pays about 6 to 20%. And of course, they want to perpetuate that situation. The legislation going through the US right now is to extend the tax cuts so that the billionaires will continue to benefit and accumulate.
The last president who had the idea of cutting taxes for the rich and putting tariffs up all over the place is a guy named Herbert Hoover. And you know how well it worked out for him.
My understanding is that they want to cut the taxes to offset some of the increase in cut the taxes internally to offset some of the taxes that they're putting on trade, and also to bring back manufacturing into the States, thereby spurring the economy.
Learn and execute leadership, and the leadership is special because it's not the kind of leadership you get in your job, which is very hierarchical generally. It's not hierarchical, Rotary. So anything, decision-making is made by persuasion rather than prescription. And that takes skill. And I really, as a former president of the organization, can tell you that. And the fourth thing is it's an opportunity to make friends. And a lot of friends from various different walks of life that we would not normally meet in our everyday work, day life in work. So Rotary is opportunity. Thank you. Thank you.
That sounds like Joe Clark.
Thank you, Joe. Now call on Walter Wells to, you want to do it from there, Walter, or introduce our speaker? Great.
Did you say it sounded like Joe Clark?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Today, we are privileged to have Ray Charbonneau as our speaker. We will be educated about Lions, their clubs and their organization, and quite a bit more, I guess, because he brought a lot of pictures. Ray Charbonneau is originally from the Brockville area and moved to Toronto many years ago, and he now lives in Scarborough with his family. His business of 35 years specializes in the presentation of art collections and exhibitions. Some of the art in this building has come from your organization. He joined Lions in 1999 and is currently a member of the Lions Club of Toronto Central. He has served in every club office and continues to sponsor new members. Ray has served as a District A historian since 2004, where he manages archives, produces historical presentation, and writes articles for the Lions magazine. In addition, he's had training in broadcasting, public speaking, and tours. This description that sounds kind of perfect for to inform us about Lions. I invited Ray to talk to us today to give us an opportunity to compare the important aspects of another service organization, which must have similar values and structure as does Rotary. Ladies and gentlemen, Ray Charbonneau.
Ron, am I sharing my screen or is he gonna do it on here?
Yeah, okay, we're just gonna double check. Hello, David, do you, people online, are you with us?
We are. Do you want me to share my screen or what?
Can we share screen? Do you have a Ray's presentation?
I do.
It started, David. Okay, let's go.
Okay, so that looks like a good starting spot. Thank you, Walter, for that introduction and your kind invitation to come and speak with you today. Good afternoon, everyone. I am grateful to have the opportunity to meet with you all. I believe congratulations are in order because I understand the Rotary Club of Toronto-Eglinton is celebrating 70 years of service. Am I correct when I say that? Yeah, well done. Give yourselves a hand. Well done. In preparation for today, I took the time to refresh my memory about the excellent service record of Rotary International. I read about the object of Rotary, your vision statement, core values, 3 T's, 4 pillars, 4 trusts, 5 rules, and your well-known 4-way test, and your motto, service above self. So I had used some of this before because I made a study of service clubs and mutual benefit societies and whatnot. I was reminded of the efforts of Dr. Sylvia Whitlock, who helped all of the service clubs pass membership gender barriers that we had back in the 1970s. You know who I'm talking about when I say Sylvia, right? I was impressed with the many fine services that you provide and the many people that you help. Some of you may be unfamiliar with Lions Clubs International. It may sound like a parallel universe as I unfold this story, yet we have much in common. So we'll start here with our emblem at the front over here, and I won't spend a lot of time on this, except that I am an art person, as Walter so ably said. One thing I would draw your attention to, a lot of people don't see, is the 2 profiles of lions' faces on this emblem. Its design is from 1920, although this version here is from 2009. The profiles are never mirror images of each other. They're always 2 individual lions. And over the years, over 100 years that this has been around, the people have conjured up all kinds of things, you know, looking past, you know, at the things that we've done and forward for things that we want to do, that kind of thing. Next slide, please. I grew up in a small town, and one of the things I saw sort of very early on were these service club signs that are probably on every small town when you enter it. And to me, I was fascinated, like, you know, like they're just images, if you will, right? But what are they? I mean, there's a little bit of information on them. And that sort of began like a quest for me, I think, at some point to figure out what I could about all these organizations. And I've made an exploration of many of them at this point here, including the Optimist Club, the Civitan Club. Kinsman, you may know, is actually uniquely Canadian, right? That one started in Hamilton in 1920. So we'll take the next slide, please, Dave. Thank you. Yeah, our origins, well, our birthday is in 1917. We actually were derived from an earlier fraternal organization called the Royal Order of Lions. These mutual benefit societies existed in an era where there really were no social safety nets. So what they would do is they would get together to basically have group insurance was the whole thing. So especially where in the traditional family of those days, the husband was the breadwinner, something happened to them, like the family could be destitute. So that was one of the reasons why those societies came around. Still some around today. There's one that has moved on to like financial products these days, but you've probably seen the building on Don Valley Parkway in Eglinton called Foresters. That actually was the Order of Foresters. I think they were way back when, right? But they parlayed that into something else. So that was our origins. We moved past that when we saw, maybe through the Rotary Club, you know, that there was a new model now where like businessmen of the day could get together, not only for networking opportunities and getting to meet one another, but to collectively do service projects. And Just like Rotary clubs, Lions clubs actually began in Chicago as well in the early 20th century. I understand Rotary's 1905, and we're 1917. Kiwanis is 1915. Civitan is like 1917. 1917, by the way, that's the beginning of the CNIB, the NHL, and the Russian Revolution. Next slide, please. This is our first club in Chicago, the Chicago Central Lions Club. They're meeting in front of the Chicago Art Institute, for those of you that are familiar with it. There's two big lions out front over there that are featured every year that Chicago wins a championship. They always dress them up in the winning jerseys and winning helmets and hats. Our founder is in the middle of this picture. So next slide, please. His name was Melvin Jones. He was an insurance man. And, back then the way that these things worked is there were classified directories in as much as if you were an insurance man, you might have a specialty in insurance, and therefore another insurance person could be a member in your same club. But it was rare that you would have two people of the same vocation in the same club. And that existed for a long time. And that's probably why so many service clubs started the way that they did. Melvin became our Secretary General, which is basically a job that he had pretty much for life. He passed away in 1961. Next slide, please. Have any of you ever visited with Paul Harris and his memorial at this is the Mount Hope Cemetery that's on the screen over here. I've actually been there because it turns out our founder is actually buried there as well. So Rotary and Lions actually share, this thing here as well. And you notice on the fence, the Rotary symbol is on the right-hand side. And below that is an information where you can find it within the cemetery. And then the Lion symbol is on the left-hand side, and again, with information on where to find that. Next slide, please. So our organization is pretty big, like Rotary, and we have divided ourselves into what we call constitutional areas. It began in the United States, so they're Constitutional Area 1. It found its way to Canada in 1920, so we're Constitutional Area 2. South America, Central America, I think Mexico probably was included in that group as well. They became a constitutional area on their own right. And then, as you see, after the war, we expanded to Europe, then eventually to the Philippines, because there was a sort of war influence there. And then it gravitated to India, eventually Australia. And most recently, I think about 2019, we were big enough now in Africa to actually have a constitutional area there as well. So this is how we divide ourselves. Each of those have administrations, but they're not like constitutional administrations, right? They function on a way to sort of carry the international message to those countries on their own. Next slide, please. Our membership, we're about 1.4 million members right now. And that's in 49,000 Lions clubs, 200 countries and geographical areas. And we've spent something like $1 billion in grants since the foundation started, which would be about 1968, I suppose. Next slide, please. We're currently on a drive. I think in the next 3 years, we actually want to succeed to 1.5 million members. We had an increase this year. We've struggled with some of the same things, that there's changing dynamics out there, and young people are hesitant to get involved with this thing because they're career conscious or family conscious. And maybe it was like that for us as well at one time, but that's our plan. Next slide. One of the big events we had was in 1925. As a matter of fact, 100 years this year, we invited Helen Keller to come and speak to us at our convention, which was at Cedar Point in Ohio. You know, Sandusky, that area, there's a big amusement park there. The hall is still there. They put this memorial outside. And she came as a representative of the American Institute for the Blind. And she was appealing to us to not only provide some funding, but also she wanted us to get behind the organization. And we did. We adopted site services as our thing as a result of her visit. I think in my research, I found out that you do a thing with Helen Keller as well, with not only deaf blind issues, but deaf issues as well, right? Helen Keller Center, am I right when I say that? Next slide, please. So this is a standard structure of our club, probably not unlike what you have in Rotary here. Most of these things, I think, we have a couple of unique ones in that we have a lion tamer. This is basically our sergeant at arms, right? So you can see how it would work, right? So their job, of course, nobody ever gets unruly on a Lions Club meeting, no more than a Rotary Club meeting, but their job would be to kind of take care of that if they could. They're also responsible for meeting and greeting and name tags and things like that. We also have something called a tail twister, and that's a great story. So I think early on, like meetings could get a little boring and very businesslike. So this person was tasked with kind of keeping things kind of fun. So there would be jokes, and then there would be little contests and kind of things like that. So these are unique things to Lions, I suppose. Next slide, please. Our district structure, again, probably not unlike yours. We have a district governor at the top of this pile, and they have vice governors and immediate past governors. And then we break down into region and zone chairs, eventually to clubs and lots of committees. And we're having our cabinet meeting this weekend, as a matter of fact, in Brampton. Next slide, please. So we have a vision statement. I won't read all this in the interest of time, but much like I read the vision statement for Rotary, I think you want to say what you are and what you're trying to do. A mission statement, we do the same thing there. Next slide. We have a purpose. We don't call it objects anymore, but it's basically to organize clubs, coordinate activities, that kind of thing. So we have one unique thing here. Maybe Rotary had this as well, but we want to make sure that we don't have a forum for the open discussion of partisan politics and sectarian religion. It does happen, right? But that's the kind of thing our lion tamer would have to take care of if they had to, right? Next, please. We emblem I already discussed with you here. We have lots of copyright around our emblem because it gets misused, and sometimes they portray these lions as really ghastly beasts, if you will, right? And their tongues are all red and like it looks like they've been eating blood. So we have to kind of keep an eye on that. Our colors are actually purple and gold, and that goes all the way back to that Royal Order of Lions. Those were their colors way back when as well, because they're royal colors, purple and gold. We have a slogan that came from the First World War, when everybody was all sort of war conscious, and that was liberty, intelligence, and our nation's safety. That it's very uniquely American. It's sort of sound. I don't think we'd hear something quite like that in Canada, but it's still around, still in our books. And our motto is "We serve." We had a big contest back in 1954, 2 years, 6,000 entries. 2 from Canada, 8 from the United States came up with the same motto, which was ultimately selected. And it turned out to be a Canadian who actually won it from Font Hill, Ontario. So we still have that going for us. Next slide, please. One of the things we have within our structure is we make sure that we try to give all the money we raise from the public back to the public. That's very difficult because there's administrative costs that aren't accounted for, but we're kind of expected as Lions to pay that out of our own pocket. And then we try to make sure that that money goes back, including money that we invest. When you have a large amount of money, you might put it in a GIC or an investment portfolio, and that earns interest. Well, we expect that interest to go back to the public as well. Administrative funds, I think, speaks for itself. Next slide, please. We have a code of ethics. This is from 1918, and it's very business-like in its sort of structure. It talks about, working with other people and and treating them with respect. One I always like, it says to hold friendship as an end and not as a means. To hold that true friendship exists not on account of the service performed by one another, but that true friendship demands nothing but accepts service in the spirit in which it is given. Next slide, please. This is our foundation. We're very proud of it. And we basically do all of our charity work through our foundation. Individual clubs, we do what we do on our own, but our foundation is where we do the big work. And, so last year, I think we did, for $70 million, $75 million, I think, in the information that's there. So next slide, please. These are people that actually give us money, some of our sponsors for various projects. Johnson & Johnson is a big one on there, but they do a lot of work, especially with pharmaceuticals. Next slide, please. This is where we kind of give away a lot of our money, right? So the Carter Center is named after Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter from Plains, Georgia, was actually a past district governor in Georgia for Lions. And him and his wife, Rosalind, started a foundation where the big thing that they do is river blindness. So we actually get medication that we send overseas, particularly to Africa, but more recently in South America. And this medication, which costs pennies really, prevents people from getting blind from the bacteria that's in drinking water. So that was a big thing that the Jimmy Carter thing. Special Olympics, we do vision screening for some of the athletes that are there who are blind or partially blind. I think the other ones you know. Next slide, please. We partner with some other people over here, not only like, to provide financial services and whatnot, but also for their help. They will be able to do things that we can't do. USAID has been in the news recently. I think you've heard that. Measles and rubella is something that we partnered with the Gates Foundation in order to do that. Next slide, please. So that was One Shot, One Life, and Lions clubs are encouraged in all their communities to try and make sure that people get vaccinated. And we have this little sort of sticker that this is a pin that people wear when they're involved with this thing. So one of the things in order to do this, we found with these big organizations like Gates and Johnson & Johnson, is that as clubs, we actually have to report service hours now. So individually, even if we're having a meeting for 2 hours, that is a record. We talk about the number of people who are there. That goes onto our official service record. Next slide, please. Site first milestones, so 9.8 million cataract surgeries. A lot of those are in China. We're allowed to do that work in China because we have Lions clubs in China. We also do a lot of eye centers and training institutes, eye care and community health workers trained. We do doses of, I don't know what these are all for, but they treat trachoma. And the last one I think is also has something to do with onychomycosis. Sorry, I'm not getting that one right. Next slide, please. These are our core services: childhood cancer, diabetes, disaster relief, environment, humanitarian, hunger, vision, youth. We try to funnel money into our efforts into all those things. Next slide. Eyeglass recycling. Every Lions club pretty much in our district, and I know in a lot of others, we have a whole network across town. Anybody that's got a pair of eyeglasses, we direct them to a website, they put in their postal code, and that tells them where to bring used eyeglasses. We collect them all, we ship them out to Calgary, and we make sure that they can distribute it all over the world. Next slide, please. Eye banks, not so big here in Ontario, but I know in Manitoba and Saskatchewan, they actually do this. So you're literally getting living tissue, right? And you have to kind of keep it safe, until it can be used. Next slide. Last year, we give a humanitarian award out every year. In our convention last year, we gave out to Stephen Lewis. You might remember he was a former ambassador to the United Nations for Canada. And when we make a donation to organizations like this, they're usually around $500,000, and they do a lot of good work with that. Next slide, please. This is something we try to do in schools, challenging, going into especially grade school situations, grade 7, grade 8. We give them materials for a peace poster. They all design it. Then there's a sort of an adjudication process through the clubs, through the district, through the multiple districts. But the winner eventually actually worldwide gets a day at the United Nations where they get a big prize. They get to bring their family with them. It's kind of a big event for us. Next slide, please. Speaking of the United Nations, way back when it all started, we were invited to participate in the non-governmental part of things over there. So ever since then, they've allowed us one day in March every year at the United Nations. And many Lions end up down there. We spend the day and we get to see all those places that we see on TV. Go ahead, please. We do a lot of training. So USA Canada Forum, it alternates into Canada sort of once every 10 years or so. Now we have to bid in US dollars, so it's very expensive for us to host these things. But we do on occasion. And we also can do, like as I have, you can be a presenter at these things. You can go down and you usually end up talking to people that way. Next slide, please. One of the things that developed out of that is what we call a Lions University. And this is all basically on your own because you can do it all online, but you can get a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, a doctorate, and anything and everything to do about Lions. I think when you're at that doctorate level, it's about how all the grant sort of things work, how the applications work and things like that, because you're usually asking for funding into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Next slide, please. This is what we look in Canada. So you can see we're distributed into multiple districts. Some of them are actually include sort of states, if you will, in the United States. That either is the state itself didn't have enough members to have a district on their own, or maybe the province that's associated with didn't have enough. The ones that are in letters are always clubs or districts that are completely in Canada. And then the other ones that are numbers are ones that border into the United States. So interesting thing, the United States allows us as Canadians, if they have a vacant seat for international director, because they have a proportion number at our international board, if they don't have anybody for it, they'll allow a Canadian to sit in an American board seat. It doesn't work the other way, because we've had vacancies as Canadians and Americans aren't allowed to actually hold that board seat. It's kind of odd. We're in District A, which I'll talk about in a minute. Next slide, please. Some of the things we do, this is in Oakville, Ontario. We have an old high school we moved back into in the 1980s. We train service dogs. Originally, they were dogs for people who are blind, but now they're for hearing. They're for people that have blood sugar, because dogs can smell blood sugar. I guess they do autism, special skills. They'll help people in and out of bed, you know, those kinds of things. $35,000 a dog, and we put out about 100 a year. So it's a big deal for us. Next slide. Lions Quest, we try to work with school boards. We have some success in Toronto. The Toronto School Board have their own version of this, but we train teachers to help students who are struggling with, you know, all the issues that kids have, you know, these days, which sometimes are tied to sort of social media and things like that. So that's, again, a big thing. We train the trainers, I guess, is the way we do that. Next slide, please. I had mentioned the recycling thing, so we'll skip over that. This is something we set up a few years ago, but we can make donations now in Canada, and we can proportion those donations for Canadian disaster relief or Canadian projects. And we can also tax receipt those donations. So that's kind of new for us. In the past, we had to send it all to the US, where none of that would happen. Next slide, please. This is our multiple district. The far north over there, we go all the way up to Moose Factory. In the far south, we're almost over to Windsor. And in the far east, we're almost over to Ottawa. And then within there, we had 10 districts, if you will. And those numbers, which are small and hard to see there, that would give you some indication of our size. Go ahead. Big project for us in the 60s. We bought a whole bunch of land up around McTier, Ontario, and we run this adjustment center for blind people. Essentially, for the month of July, I think all the boys go up there and they get the summer camp experience. But everything is catered to their blind activities. They learn how to like sail and swim and do anything and everything you would do at a college. And then in August, I think all the girls go up there. It's kept co-ed for whatever reason, but we spent a lot of money on developing that, but it's basically run by the CNIB. Next slide, please. This one's a little bit later in the 70s, but Camp Dorset's up around Lake of Bays. Again, we bought a big holiday property up there, and this is now a camp for people who have kidney failure, and they go up because there's dialysis machines and nurses on site. They can actually go have a camp experience, but still get the treatment that they need. Next slide, please. This is our local district here, and that would be sort of Scarborough all the way out to Hamilton, and in the far north over there, sort of just shy of Orangeville. We have about 80 clubs in that area that we administer, and yeah, that's about it. A711 is what we call it. Sorry, went too far. Okay, next, there we go. Our big local district project here is with the CNE for the last 20 years. I think 20 years. We've been the sponsor for the Pee Wee baseball tournament. So teams from all over Ontario and New York State come up here. We try to put all the funding in for the tournament, which costs something around $30,000. We run a snack bar through it because it's outside the grounds of the CNE. Otherwise, nobody would be able to get in. But the kids all get tickets and passes to the CNE, so they get the whole CNE experience. So we have a lot of fun with that. Next slide, please. The big project here, one of our Alliance clubs is down in the Lakeshore community, if you will. And they put together for a small club, they had a rink for 30 years, which was the practice facility for the Toronto Maple Leafs. So I guess they got a lot of money out of that. And they decided they would do this 4-pad project. So practice facility for the Maple Leafs, which they still use. There's an Olympic-sized rink for our Olympic team. There's another rink, I think, for the Etobicoke Diamonds, which is ladies hockey, which is getting bigger than ever right now. And then a regular rink. They ran into problems. I think it was $30 million for a club. It's the biggest project Lions probably had anywhere in the world. But they couldn't sustain it. They didn't have the membership for it, and they couldn't get any more funding. They leveraged out of the bank. So it's now called the MasterCard Center because basically they had to give it up, but they allowed them to keep their name on it. Next slide. This is our newest project here. I mentioned the dog school in Oakville. We bought some property in another part of Oakville, roughly for 403 and the QEW sort of meet. We're building this facility, which is $60 million. It's still a big hole in the ground. There's a few steel girders up. The other school was basically a high school, so the accessibility options like the front stairs, nobody in a wheelchair would be able to get up and down, right? And it just was going to end up spending more money than we wanted to, and we kind of outgrown it because of all these other dog disciplines we have. But that'll be probably the next project, and we're actually well ahead in the funding, so we're optimistic about that. And the next slide is the last slide. So I wanted to put us both up over here because I wanted to go back to that sign that I showed you in the beginning that we see at all sort of service clubs where we're coming into small towns. And we're very proud to be on the same sign with the Rotary Club. We know the good work that you do, and we're proud to be able to come and share with you today some of the things that we're doing. And we want to give you credit for maybe being inspirational for what we do. So that's my talk, and I have maybe time for a few questions that Walter says.
Sorry, I'll try to speak loud for the folks on, okay, I'll come up. Thank you. So I have a question about the Lions Club, and do you do projects with other clubs? Because when you were talking about the things that you do and your immunization, it struck me Rotary is very involved in polio eradication, and we're very involved in polio vaccines worldwide. You're doing measles. Is this an opportunity for perhaps a collaboration where, there's a 2-for-1 on your immunization clinics?
So locally, I would say that we probably don't have quite as much of that as we would like. It's not hard to say what the reasons why. I mean, maybe it's just everybody's got all their projects already on the go. But I can speak of communities. I spoke with our past international director in St. David's recently. He says in their community over there, Rotary, Kiwanis, and Lions always work together. Anything and everything that's going on. So I would say there are lots of communities in Canada where there would be, if that's not already going on, there would be opportunities for it to do. Here, I think it'd probably take a little bit more of an effort. Perhaps somebody from our organization to come speak at the district level, for 70/70, is that your district? Yeah. So perhaps we came and introduced ourselves there and opened up the dialogue, or you could send a representative to one of our meetings. I think there's an opportunity in that. Anyone else?
I have a question. How do you attract members locally, and what does it cost to be a Lion for a year?
Good question. So fees are different for different clubs. We have a structure where we have to pay dues to our international organization. That's a fixed rate. Usually there's a fee for joining. That's an administrative cost. And then the multiple district has a fee as well because they put on a convention and produce a magazine. And then at the district level, we also put on a convention and we have some administrative costs. So some of that comes out. So we have that sort of set cost right away for any member that we want to have join us. But then we, in a club, we always want to have a few extra dollars for, if we want to invite someone as a guest for our dinner or a speaker, we want to make sure we have some money at hand to cover those kind of costs, because we don't use any of the money that we raise from the public for that. So that's the basic cost. In my club, we spend $150 per member per year to cover that all off, and it seems to work for us. And then beyond that, the second part of the question, I guess, is attracting new members. So we have a big network, and actually the support comes from our international office, where people can reach out through us. And so I'm the membership chair for our club. And I'd say it's probably once every week or so that we'll get a message from somebody who's looked us up online, gone through a portal there and sent a message. And sometimes that message goes to our district governor, who will find an appropriate club or close by club. Sometimes it'll just come directly to us if they're looking for someone in Toronto, because we are the downtown club. So we're attracting members that way, and we're attracting a kind of younger group. We've added, I think this year, 6 people who are between the ages of 30 and 50. So for us, because we have a membership, I'm 66, and we have a few members that are in their 80s and one in their 70s. so we know that if we don't replenish that, that we can, sort of kind of fall off the rails as well. So that's the main thing. We will once in a while do some kind of a membership drive. And I've actually participated in community events in sort of outlying districts where we've gone to a shopping mall and we just set up a table with the permission of the people involved. And we just put out all the projects and all the paperwork and about who we are and what it is that we do. We invite the puppies that are at the dog guys school to come down because everybody likes to pet a puppy, right? And we do attract attention that way. Every once in a while, we'll get some money for advertising. LCI will give us, here's $30,000. Well, you contact a radio station, I tell you $30,000 doesn't go very far. And so we don't have a whole lot of luck with that. But does that answer your question?
Actually, so really it's $150 to join your club then?
That'd be correct, yes.
$150 a year.
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
That's the club or these the Lions International teams as well.
Well, if it comes through the district governor, yeah, they'll recommend a club close by to where that individual lives. Because
No, the 150, that's it.
well, that comes to us, and then we pay all those dues that I mentioned out of that, and then we have a little bit left over for our own purposes. So that's basically it. Over here.
I notice your projects are international driven rather than club driven.
That's
So
true.
you have big projects with 1 million and 60 million versus 2,000 and 3,000.
Yeah.
We seem to participate in.
Well, club level, we're about the same, right? My own particular club, we have a charitable foundation and a memorial trust that we administer. So we have trustees that are involved with that. We have money invested, and that money usually we proportion out to like various causes in the city. So that's one way in which we do it, but there's always a risk in that of becoming a check writing club. You really, like, you're not hands-on, you're not rolling up your sleeves and being out in the community. So that's something we have to guard against as well. It's only at the district level, the Pee Wee baseball thing I mentioned, that we actually are able to do something bigger, where we can partner with other clubs. So where it's possible, we haven't found a way to do this locally in Toronto yet, but partner with Rotary Club, and do something that way, we might achieve something even bigger.
Well, I noticed on your presentation, you talked about something with the TIS, the Toronto School Board
Yes.
Quest.
Yeah.
We do a lot with youth. I'm the chairman of the youth area. I think that there might be something there we could get together. And because the TS, dealing with the school board is almost impossible.
It's tough. Especially if they've already got that project. For us, we found Peel, we were really lucky there, Wentworth, because we go out that far. A little bit of York, we do some of that, so we have some access there. But, and the only one in Toronto that gives us any kind of year is the Catholic School Board. They'll actually let us do a little bit of work there too, right? But we're working on vision screening right now. So these pieces of equipment are $30,000-$40,000 each. And the idea is to get into schools and pre-screen kids. But there we run into problems because we have organizations for nurses, for instance, who see us as unqualified to do that. When really all we're trying to do is just maybe alert some of the family to a problem, so that they can go and visit professionals and have that looked at. It's a big hurdle for us to get past.
Again, you think internationally, we think locally.
Right.
So one of us has to change a little bit.
I think we-
Well, a lot of
completely
things
true,
different.
Tom, because I live up in Southern Port, and I know that to some extent, you're a member of the Lions Club and and the Rotary Club, but they do projects. And when we get out in our district, in Uxbridge, the Lions and the Rotary Club have worked together on projects in Port Hope and so on and so forth. I think it is probably a little more difficult to do it in Toronto. Someone has to start, and we do a lot of international projects too. So I don't think it's an either or.
No, there's all kinds of options. We regularly use Nathan Phillips Square. We've occasionally even had a meeting in City Hall down there because, as a registered charity, we have access to all that and through our local councillor. So, that's a big spot to do things, right? We've done flag sort of ceremonies down there on occasion. There are lots of rules to using Nathan Phillips Square, but we have some City Hall connections to help sort that out. Things like that go on in the St. Lawrence Market. We used to do a lot of Busker Fest stuff when it was downtown. Now it's out at Woodbine Park. You may know the Toronto Easter Parade that goes on the beaches every year. That's a Lions Club project, the Toronto Beaches Lions Club. They never, it's a funny thing for advertising reasons, they never get that recognition. It's just called the Toronto Easter Parade or the Beaches Easter Parade. The Lions is almost always left out of it. But they spend a lot of money on that to get money from all the parade floats. But then, you have to deal with, like some issues, like legal issues, right? You can't throw candy on the ground and expect kids to pick that up and eat it. So we have to tell people, about that. And there's problems that you don't see. So beyond that, we do a blind car rally where we raise money for the Lions Foundation of Canada. So think of that, right? You basically have your navigator is either blind or near blind, and you are the driver, but you're following the instructions. But you're trying to. I've done that. I even won it once, right? Because but the whole trick about any kind of rally is watching the speed limit, right? Make sure that you're always on the speed limit because it's all timed and everything else. So so we have a lot of fun with that project. But yeah, I see your point. When I think about our club, we struggle sometimes like to come up with bigger projects too. So you're quite right.
Your meeting, you meet once a week?
Yeah, we're still a luncheon club as well. So many years prior to COVID, we were meeting at the Sheridan Hotel. They gave us a private dining room for our purposes there. We could seat about 25, 30 people in there. We had audio visual facilities and it was a sort of meal service. But that restaurant closed down, so we had to bounce around a little bit. We did City Hall for a while. Right now, we're actually meeting on Sunday afternoons at the Gooderham Flatiron building. So they will allow us to have the back room over there, and yeah. So yeah, we happen to like that, and well, there you go. So one of the things that we have is, as you probably know, right, downtown on Sundays up until 1 o'clock, parking is free. Right, so because it's a big expense. I come in from Scarborough where I live, and so I not only have the traffic and everything getting down here, but then you pay for parking, then you pay for a meal, and then you got all the traffic going home. All those things add up to that point about the costs, right? Those are costs that you don't see like when you belong. But we only meet in person once a month, and then our other meeting is virtual. We have a board meeting once a month. That's only for the board members, and that's all virtual. We find we can share a lot more information online doing that. We do orientation meetings for new members. We do that generally online as well. And then we try to get together for service projects. This month, we're at the Mattamy Center. We sponsor the blind hockey tournament there. We've been a sponsor for that since its beginning 10 years ago. So we not only provide some funding, but we go down and try to cheer on the athletes because they're blind hockey players, right? So obviously the goaltenders are completely blind because they wouldn't be able to manage it on the ice. The people out on the ice are partially blind, right? So they can actually see a little bit. And then they use a big 9-inch puck that's got a rattle inside, right? So they can hear the puck. But it's the thrill of a lifetime. These kids, like for some of them, like they will never play a bigger hockey game in their life than being able to play in that tournament. And they come from all across Canada. And this year, I think they're getting recognized as possibly a Paralympic thing. So I think it's going to join the Special Olympics in short time as well. April, we're going to do a community cleanup. We always pick a park downtown. And so now we have to worry about. I like Bursey Park, yeah. We've done. Well, you know what? Earth Day, I think that's the 24th or something like that. We're looking for a spot. So how about we maybe meet you down there? One of the things downtown, of course, homeless people, and we every once in a while we always try to we'll do a day where we just go down and feed them all a breakfast. And this has been cold, and they slept in a tent, and they're angry and they're frustrated and stuff like that. So we try to put a good spin on that if we can. But, we also run into downtown problems, people who are high on drugs, Sherbourne and Queen Street, for instance, right? So, we always have to have a safety officer kind of making sure nothing escalates. Walter, if I'm talking too long, you need to stand up and let me know, okay?
It's up to the people
Okay.
here, but how much time we've got left?
Maybe one more question.
Okay, one more.
Maybe online, is there anybody with a question?
Yes, I do.
Right.
I've got Stephen. Yeah, the question I've got is, I understand no politics at Lions meetings as there's no politics at a Rotary meeting. But what happens internationally when you run into politics. So for instance, sounds like Lions are heavily involved with USAID as Rotary is. The American government has killed off USAID. You throw up your hands and say, oh, wow, we can't do politics and walk away, or do you fight back? The same thing with vaccinations.
Good points. And you know, early on, what I've heard is the USA Canada Forum I mentioned. We think attendance will be down. People will just choose not to go to the United States this year for that reason. Our convention is in Tampa. We're electing an international director from our area over here. Canada's had a permanent international director seat since 1931. So we're very desperate to keep that because you need a certain number of members to have that. There's 35 members on the board, so we want that one voice to be there. So the politics of it all, like we know that that's out there. Our international speakers are much better than I am, know how to cover that off. It shows up once in a while. We're having occasions now where the US flag is, for instance, out on the stage, if you will, alongside a Canadian flag and our Lions flag. And if we have an international guest from the US, we always honor them by singing the American anthem. So now we have to instruct people that, you know, we're not political. This is about respecting the flag and the people of a country. And, you know, we're not booing, we're not doing that. Right? So we have those issues, and politics is, you can't avoid it. We're human beings, right? Up and down, you know, you will have that. It's just one of those things you just learn to sort of respect other people and remember what we're all here to do. And I want to conclude here by recognizing what our Rotarian Joe said in his acknowledgement earlier on. You know, when asked about what Rotary Club is, you know, I think, you know, you need to remember those things, right? And the rest will sort of not be so much of an issue. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ray, that was amazing. Thank you so much. Some of you know I grew up in a very small town of 3,000 people. And of course, we saw Rotary there and Lions Club there. Everybody, we all knew everybody was doing good work. But I've never had the insight into what the Lions Club actually does until you spoke today, and it was fabulous. So thank you so much. Hopefully we can work together in some way down the road. And on behalf of Toronto Eglinton, I want to give you a little gift from us.
Thank you. Thank you. Very
Pleasure.
much.
Thanks again, Ray.
Thanks, Ray. We're going to continue on with the business part of our meeting, which you're welcome to stay. Sure. Yeah, good, great. And so one of the first things I'll do, so we sort of flipped our schedule a little bit, so the speaker speaks first. And then, so some of the things that are sometimes done at the beginning of the meeting, I'll only be getting to now, like saying that we have 17 members here and 11 online. So 28, which is for us is a nice size meeting. 25 to 30 is good for our group. Guests, are there any guests online? I don't think so. And a live guest? Sure. You want to introduce yourself?
Hello, thank you for the opportunity of inviting me. I'm Daniel Pierre from Rotary in France at Orléans, and I'm geologist, and I was attending the convention of the PDAC, and I had the opportunity to have a bit of time and just call yesterday. Thank you very much for welcoming me. And I have a special guest. Sorry for my English. I have.
Yeah, you can come on up.
Bienvenue.
Oh, merci.
Okay, welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
You can stay in place for a second. Let me just sorry. I wasn't ready for this.
Okay, continue.
Okay, Walter's gonna take a picture of presidents exchanging banners here in a second. Birthdays, Denise celebrated her birthday on Monday, and yesterday was Laura's birthday. Happy birthday to, I think Laura's with us.
Yeah.
Today it was online. And do you want to do a photo now or at the end of the meeting or?
At the end of the meeting.
Okay, yeah, good. Ray, Ray, one of the things we do, we don't have a lion tamer or a tail twister. We have something called Happy Bucks, which we allow members certain opportunity to advertise and say something they're happy about and contribute, you know, so live, somebody want to be the first to show Ray how we do it? Lars.
Well, two things, $5. I'm happy, Daniel, you found us and that I looked at the computer before I left to come down here. So I could respond. We hope to see you next year at PDAC as well. Now that you know that we're here. For those who don't know, PDAC is the largest conference in the world when it comes to prospector and the mining industry. And I've had some experience. Now, Ray, it was very interesting, and I think maybe we should see if we could find one of the hands-on projects, cleaning a park together or whatever. So I read that.
Good, excellent. Okay, going back to Lisa.
I'm happy Joe's here.
Yes, Sergio, in the flesh. Bill Martin.
I was very, very pleased, Ray, to hear what you were saying about science. We've known about them all my life and really didn't know what you did. And it's just really wonderful. And there's so many ways we can link up, I would think. Yeah, there's lots, some of the things you do make a lot of sense, which we don't.
Hunt.
I again want to thank Ray for coming. I think as Canadians, it's time we get together and we work together for Canada. And I think you guys do good work. You think a little bit different than we do. And I think that it could help us think a little bit better going forward. So thank you for reaching out to us.
And you've got puppies.
Any other happy bucks in the room or online? Somebody get one online, just so we can make sure that this thing actually works with the speaker and the computer. No? Okay. No.
David's trying to talk, but he can't hear.
No, I'm not. I'm shaking my head.
Okay, well, we can hear you, so that's the test work. Okay, I think there's gonna be a number of reports, including the group that went to OASI, but we'll put that all under President Lars' time at the podium here. Do you want to hold it or should I try to?
I'll give it here. Just one. Is it on? Yeah,
yeah.
one thing to begin with, and then we'll let Norma and or Tom talk about Friday at OEC, and then I'll finish off with some of the things. The reason that we have cheeses is that it's actually the International Cheese Day today, so that's what I thought it would be, something to have. But it's cheese. Yeah. Walter, I have a gift for you. And this is a Paul Harris +3 that came with to the mailbox the other day. So that means that Walter has reached another level of Paul Harris Award. So thank you for donating funds to the foundation and keep giving. Okay, Norma, Tom, please report from OEC and then I'll come back.
I'm going to read this because I want to make sure you get everything. It was wonderful. First, I want to thank Lars for driving all the way down from Fenton Falls to work the bingo for me. I really would not. And Lisa, so were you my replacement?
Yeah.
I was supposed to work, but we went to this workshop and I think you, Okay, thank you. I think you all know about the Facing History and Ourselves is a program that's trying to help young people learn how to be comfortable talking about uncomfortable subjects, racism, anti-Semitism. Again, I'm going to read this. So the Facing History and Ourselves workshop gave principals, vice principals, teachers, and administrators strategies and a framework for navigating critical conversations that would enable teachers and students to stand up to racism, anti-Semitism, and other forms of bigotry and hate. Leora made a point of informing the class that the workshop was made possible through the support of Rotary Toronto Eglinton and honoring the legacy of Tibor. We were acknowledged many times throughout the day and thanked by many participants. It was an excellent workshop and well worth our attending. One of my favorite parts was the group work. Participants were given strategies and then they were broken into small groups to practice the strategies they were given, which I thought really was very effective. I mean, it's the only way to do it. You talk about something and then you put these teachers, these educators together, and they have to come up with how to do it. One could feel the positive feeling in the room as participants engaged in conversations with each other. I feel the participants of this workshop have been given a good framework and materials that they can take back to their respective schools to share and implement. This workshop exceeded my expectations with close to 50 participants. It was held in a bright, spacious room, and the presenters did an excellent job presenting the material. And I look forward, they're going to have another 2-day workshop this summer. And I can't talk highly enough about how Rotary was acknowledged for supporting this and how positive I think it was. Tom?
I'd like to also just to reaffirm everything that she said. We were so special. This is a brand new organization trying to set up something for teachers at a time when they're faced with how do you handle Israeli, Palestinian, short, fat, I know that one, tall, skinny, smart. And I sat there, we were gonna stay a couple hours, but we stayed the whole day. Because we watched the way it went, the way they were presented. And I watched principals and vice principals and administrators sit in awe and say, this would have been cheaper than a marriage counselor. And this is part of the programs that I know we're starting to work towards. We got to make a difference in everything we do. We can't just give a check and forget about it. We got to get involved. We got to make a big statement. And when we do, we got to make ourselves available for it. I think what we heard today from you, we're learning every day. You have a seat at the UN, so does Rotary have a seat at the UN. Every school has mini UNs where kids are learning to think in somebody else's skin about how to do things. Jackie, my friend, is excited and I'm excited. We think we want to start bringing to you guys a plan that we can help set up this mini Rotary in all the schools or mini UN in all the schools with Rotary backing. And I'd gladly open it up to having Lions work with us. It isn't about, it's what we're doing is more important than how we do it. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Tom.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you, and thank you, Jackie, too.
Can I just make a say? I'd like to thank Tom and Norma for staying the whole day. That says how riveting the activities were. And what I took away from it, I was there for about an hour, is that the message from, first of all, there were principals from the Jewish private schools, independent schools, TDSB, and Toronto Catholic, teachers and principals and vice principals. And what the word was is that conversations are shutting down in classrooms because people don't know how to handle it. They haven't been, the average teacher hasn't been trained to deal with such controversial issues that are right there in their face. And so they're avoiding them. And this kind of a workshop is giving teachers confidence and a framework. It's like, how do you be a marriage counselor? This is what they were taught how to do, to listen with empathy, with curiosity, with understanding. This is the quad of dialogue. We could all practice it ourselves. So thank you, Tom and Norma, for staying for the whole day and reporting on it. There's another 2-day workshop in August. If there's anybody who's interested in attending, we'll let you know.
Thank you very much, Jackie, and thank you for actually being very active in that second. Just speaking about working together, when Leora spoke at our club, I asked her if I could send her some material about the Raoul Wallenberg Academy and the Young Courage Award. And she said, yeah, please do. And I did, and she got excited about that. And I'm trying to actually get a meeting together between her organization and the Wallenberg Academy in Sweden, because they got excited too about this. So you never know what can come out of a Rotary meeting.
Yep.
Opportunities, as Senior Dr. Clark said. Because of the time, I'm not going to read the 101-minute speech I had prepared, because I wanted to actually, maybe the politicians need to get a little bit of training too on that. But interesting for the history buffs and the medical field, 1558 on this day, March 5th, smoking tobacco was introduced in Europe by a Spanish physician, Francisco Fernandez. So there's what you could see. And I don't know if you saw in the store on Saturday, they had article about how the world look upon Canada and different countries, and the person that they had contacted in Sweden said, well, Canada to us is Mounties, moose, and hockey. And just to have a little bit of a hockey thing, today, 1911, the Montreal Wanderers beat Ottawa Senators in the Stanley Cup final 3-1. There is a large number of events happening on the International Women's Day. There is an event on the 12th, a dinner for the foundation on the 12th that is East York is organizing together with the clubs in the eastern part. Matt Emerson. There is a Rotary portion of the St. Patrick's Day parade on the 16th. And there is something else there that day. But I will put all that in that messy newsletter that comes out. So there we will have all that information. And bingo, again, Lisa, thank you. Lisa has not, for various reasons, not been at bingo for a while. And this was her opportunity to see the St. Clair bingo hall for the last time. And she rushed. She ran. And Monday night, Anna and I did the same there. So thank you, Anna, for showing up for that. And the 1st of April, we are not afraid of doing things, or bingo is not afraid of doing things on the 1st of April. I heard someone. Don yesterday saying that he wouldn't start on the 1st of April, but we can do that. That's when the new bingo hall at 360 Evans, which is south of QEW, between Kipling and Islington, where the school bus is still there. And I just got yesterday the schedule for April, May, and June. And the good news is actually that we get 3 sessions in May. So we get 7. Thank you.
Right, does anyone have anything quick for the good of Rotary, Walter?
We also have a commitment today with the out of the call. And if there's one in the room, if there's one extra person that might be available tonight, I could use one extra person. not, you know, not absolutely necessary, but would certainly be helpful. Would you come? Fabulous. Okay, thank you. Okay.
Super. Online, anyone?
Thank you.
Okay, great. We will adjourn this meeting. Next week will be on Zoom only. Try to log on around noon and we'll kick off officially, get the meeting started at 11:15. So I apologize for running late. I think I got us going about 5 minutes late, and that's what we're closing here. So have a good week. See you on Zoom on Wednesday.
Thanks, Ron.